We're there. Hey, what's up? War Wrestling Live. We are here with, somebody I've been wanting to get a hold of, and we finally did. Shout out to Jeff Estrada. Shout out to Shane McCall. Shout out to all those guys. Shout out to the guy at Woodward. What's his name? Jeff Reagan. Sorry, Coach Reagan. I love you. You were great on the show. I got ADD and a lot of guests. But thanks to everybody who's kind of reached out to Mike Moore and said, hey, you should be on the show. He reached out. We made it happen. Here he is. So if you all don't know, he's one of the regional directors at Wrestling Mindset. He is a wrestler. He wrestled at the University of Maryland. He grew up in Long Island and a little tough area there that I'm sure he'll talk about. He still travels the country coaching, doing wrestling camps. He's very involved in different wrestling programs. And he's here with us today, man. What's happening? Mindset, Mike Moore. What's up, brother?
What's up, man? I'm happy to be here. You know, this is a time where we're all going through something different. No one's you know, this is not the favorite time of anyone in sports lives. So it's valuable for guys like you to bring in lots of wrestling minds to talk about how they're making the most of it, strategies they're using, and just, you know, like for me, ways to make the most out of this time as a coach, as an athlete, as a parent. I'm excited to be here. A lot of great guests, a lot of friends of mine were on here. So looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. Obviously a popular dude. What you guys are doing at Wrestling Mindset is all over the place. I actually signed up for your text messages, so I get them.
Nice.
Get the quotes. First of all, I know that you do a lot of this kind of stuff, and you do a lot of motivating, and you're around the country doing, you know, selling the brand and the value behind it. But you also do wrestle, and you are a coach, and you are on these mats.
Right.
So obviously the COVID has had some sort of effect on your life. What kind of effect has it had, and how valuable now is your mindset work with these guys? Because these kids really need that right now, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, well, one of the things that as we talk to more and more schools, not just about Wrestling Mindset, but our academic mindset program, is that mindset, sports in general, but mindset's almost more important than math and science right now. Not dissing a single teacher or a subject. Everyone's important, but I'm saying the idea is we need to teach kids how to navigate this time so that they can make the most of this unique opportunity. We can't see this as something that's an obstacle in our way. It's an opportunity. Everything's an opportunity. If I tear my ACL like I did in college, it's an opportunity to focus my attention on this, and this. It's not an inconvenience to my wrestling career. It's an opportunity to do this, and this, to do something different. I'm going to talk about this later, but you know, COVID right now, you can either be complaining about what's going on and how it impacts you, or you can focus how to make the most of this opportunity. Focus is finite, right? So what you focus on determines your attitude. Your attitude determines your effort. So teachers, parents, athletes, coaches, like this is not going away. So you're going to make the most of this, or it's going to wear you down, right? You're going to double down on whatever it is that you're doing in your effort and find new ways to get better, or you're going to go far behind. So for me, it's definitely impacted the way we do business. We're not traveling as much. Didn't get to speak at a lot of the conventions I normally am at over the summer. You know, didn't get to go to Fargo as a coach or as a vendor. I had my entire June and July was booked for wrestling and mindset appearances for camps, canceled. But, you know, some camps we were able to figure it out. Other opportunities we were able to figure it out. But, you know, I know for me, it's given me the opportunity where instead of I'm on the road all the time, it gave me the opportunity to spend more time with my wrestlers at home. So I'm a director at a wrestling director at a gym in Houston called Moor Training Center. So obviously I'm from New York. I moved to Houston when I was in my FBI career, which we could talk about later. And you know, I spend a lot of time on the road for the mindset business, and it limits my opportunities to be at home on a consistent basis. Well, I got the opportunity to be with my wrestlers, honestly, more than ever. Like, even if I even prior to Wrestling Mindset. I was with them 3-4 days a week on a regular basis. They couldn't go to school practice, didn't have anything. We had a secret place to train, and that was outside of the box that we were able to make happen. And I spent more time with them than ever. I know when my kids come back physically, mentally, technically, they're so ready. It's just making sure that we keep them motivated and like, hey, we don't know when season's going to be, but when it happens, you better be more ready now than you ever were before, because the best kids in the country, and that's what we want to compete against, right? The number 2, top 3 kids in the state, best kids in the country, they're training, they're figuring out ways. So do we. So, I spent a lot more time at home, a lot more time around my house doing the projects I put off for 5-6 years. I learned a lot of new skills, just got creative. Like just like wrestling, if you go down 5 points in the first period, are you going to go for big moves? Are you going to get mad, or are you just going to chip away and figure out how to make the most of, the cards that were dealt?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my wife is strict, as people know, because I say it a lot. So the kids have not been allowed to go out, but we have mats here. We have weights for them here. And I just, like you said, I just try to tell them, look, all you can control is what you can do with what you can't control. Your mom's decision, COVID's decision, the world's decision, the president. None of that stuff you can control. All you control is wake up in the morning, do what you can do, and go to bed at night. And so,
well, really, even to speak on that and to give it a little more detail, which I'm sure we'll get into later, is what you can control is your effort, your attitude, like your enthusiasm and like the energy that you bring when it comes to things outside of wrestling in general, right? Like whatever the situation is, make the most of it. And if you're in a place like Utah or South Dakota that's got no restrictions, or Texas, which in some places has limited restrictions, it allows us, like make the most of it. If you're in New York, socially distanced with masks and no gyms, all right, you got to buy a couple weight plates and do plate workouts. Like, COVID makes me think of Rocky IV. Rocky didn't need the fancy, all the fancy equipment. Rocky didn't need the steroids that Ivan Drago was taking. He made the most of like what he had, and he got strong, he got big, he got fast, and he took down a giant. Right now, COVID is Ivan Drago. Right? Like that's what COVID is. So you're either going to bow down or you're going to get creative, because I promise you, because I've been with them, the best kids in the country have widened the gap a lot. And the hungry kids, they've closed the gap a lot. We're going to see the top 5% are going to be so far ahead. And we're going to see a lot of kids you never heard of knocking off kids at tournaments this year, for sure. But what the whole moral of the story was, you can control you, not anyone else, not anything else. You focus on your effort, your attitude, your energy, and also your response. No matter what your state says, what's your response? What's next? What are you going to do? You can't complain. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I agree. And just well said, man. It's well said. Kids need to hear that. And because there are a lot of kids and families that are still inside, and they have to take advantage of just what they have in there. And that's what we've been doing. My son's just been lifting weights and doing some different stuff, but I think it was a summer for him to get stronger anyway. So it kind of benefits that.
Why was this the best thing that could happen to you? One of my clients is one of the captains at Northwestern football. He was a top 10 safety in the country, ready to get drafted, and they just canceled football or postponed it. So I have a call with him immediately when I get off with you. And our it's a hard conversation, but it's like, why was this the best thing that could have happened? Postponing to the fall, or why was it the best? You have to treat COVID like an injury, and why was this injury the best thing that could happen to you, and how do you deal with it? Period. End of story. Because if your life depended on it, you'd figure it out. So figure it out.
Sure. And so, first of all, well said. Cool. Fucking awesome. Second of all, so tell us how you got involved with the Zanetti brothers, the founders of the Mindset, and then of course, it's become a huge family. They got brothers and sisters and cousins, and it looks like they've got godmothers and godbrothers. I was reading all this stuff. They're all involved in it, man. Yeah. First of all, talk about how Wrestling Mindset was created, how they came up with it, the background of it, and then how you got involved with them.
Sure. So Jeff and Gene were brothers. They were wrestlers at Penn together. And, Gene pursued his degrees, masters and undergrads in clinical psychology and exercise science. And he became a school psychologist. Once he got done with his master's, he was pursuing his doctorate in sports psychology. And like 5 or 6 classes shy, he stopped, which, long story short, was a big blessing in disguise. So, as a school psychologist, I'd imagine Gene just didn't feel fed. He didn't feel like he was making the impact and doing the things that he wanted, still passionate about wrestling. And he started creating this program to address a major issue in all of our wrestling careers when we were younger, which was the gap between the mental and the physical. Wrestling's 80% mental. We train 100% physically. You don't get better at math studying English. And you can't talk about running if you want to get faster. So it's like, why are we approaching mindset very different than we do school subjects and technique? Almost drastically different. And we're like, well, I don't know. Like sometimes this kid wrestles well, sometimes he doesn't. Well, Gene's super smart, and him and Jeff both, and they came up with this wrestling specific systematic training program. And it's a combination of these like wrestling specific worksheets, pen to paper, and one-on-one mentorship with a coach. Originally, it was a individual program driven by one-on-one with an athlete and mindset coach, which at the beginning was just Jeff and Gene. That grew into more and more people liked it. We started working with teams. I was one of the original 8 to 10 coaches that came on. There were some hammers that were in that original 10. Brandon Preeson, multiple-time All-American, Dave Zabriskie, and a number of the guys that were on then are still on now as coaches. I got involved because, my background was behavioral psychology, criminology. I had a really good, mindset was a passion of mine. But at the time, sports psych really wasn't a thing. You had to know somebody who knew somebody or have your own private practice. And I was like, my whole life, I wanted to be in the FBI. I loved the psychology of sports, but I wasn't ready to make it my career. Anyways, I was always researching. I felt like my mindset was always something that was my weapon in high school, and it helped me in college. I didn't reach what I wanted to do in college. So when I my goals, so I was injured a lot, just had a lot of things that didn't add up the way that I wanted to. And I learned a lot. 4 years being a part of a program that went from bottom 3 in the ACC to top 10 in the country with multiple Americans. Our coaches were just amazing. And now my coaches both run very successful top 25 NCAA programs. And one of them is the other is an assistant coach to one of those guys. So long story short, in my club that I created, I had 13 guys make the state finals, 13 guys and girls make the state finals one year. 9 of them on paper, right, really should have won. Not just really should have won. Only 4 of them did. 5 just straight up pooped the bed. They knew exactly what they needed to do technically. They had good high school coaches. I spent all this time outside with them, technically what to do. I went and filmed, showed them things hey, this is what I would do. You do what you want. This is my suggestion. I think you're good. Focus on this. I gave them all the right advice. As a good coach, just like a lot of you watching, you give a lot of good advice. You said this, but the kid did this. And when 5 kids just didn't show up, I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I miss? Having having experience in the bureau and being a certified crisis negotiator, in addition to my already what I felt was good skills, bridging that mental gap, getting the most out of kids. I'm like, what am I missing? So I start Googling, I start searching, and I had already come across this Facebook page that was sharing a lot of really good stuff. It was called Wrestling Mindset, and the Zanettis and the page itself was sharing gold. So I would repost and share, man, guys, this is it. This is what we need to do. Ultimately, what I realized is that my kids lacked a systematic approach to address the red flags and the holes that they had in their game. They either weren't wrestling to their potential, or they were they weren't wrestling as good as they could, or they were literally getting held back from what was in here. And I told them the right advice, but they couldn't accept it, digest it, and go from there. So I hired Wrestling Mindset as a client. I was a client. And I saw how it helped my wrestlers. There was one girl I remember, she lost to the same girl 3 times during the year, and it got worse and worse and worse. She did wrestling mindset with Jeff, I believe, and leading up to the state tournament. The girl that beat her 3 times ended up being, I think, one of her matches to qualify for the state tournament. And then another girl that beat her the day before was another important match, either in the regional or the state tournament. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Another girl that beat her was one of the matches to qualify. So she lost 3 times to one girl and then had another loss. She won both those matches, right? I watched other of my kids like go above and beyond their potential. And I was like, all right, clearly this isn't just me that believes in it or the Zanettis. Like, this really works. You know, when you teach wrestlers how to focus on the right things, it's almost hard to do the wrong ones. Right. And so that's all it was that, like, I gave them the right advice. This was a systematic approach. So, you know, when we teach wrestling, you know, we drill, we do wrestling. When we teach mindset, previously, we talk about it. We watch videos. We listen to podcasts. We don't do that for technique. We don't talk about single legs. We don't talk about double legs. We do training. So mindset training was what bridges the gap. By putting pen to paper, it's like drilling, right? I could talk about technique. You can listen to me speak, or you can listen to me and put pen to paper. That's what bridged the gap. So, like, you know, my kids were good, but they were kind of like this. Wrestling mindset made it like that, right? It bridged the gap. They understood what I was saying, but they couldn't execute. That systematic approach allowed them to execute. Now, fast forward, they're like, man, the business is growing. We'd really like your help. You know, this is something that we think would be like you really understand this, like blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't leave the FBI. Like, why would you? It was my dream job, right? So, I didn't want to leave. I wasn't ready. I'm like, I believe in you, but you're still a startup. Like, I can't just risk everything for your business. Long story short, I started seeing big results. Like, the Olympic team started calling. Kyvan Gatson pinned Kyle Snyder. We were working with him and the team. We had 2, I think one of the things that really set me apart, besides some life stuff, was we had 2 unseeded wrestlers win NCAA titles. And in their interview, talked about wrestling mindset. And I'm like, all right, this isn't just something I believe in that I know is going to work. It's working at the highest level now. So ultimately, I left my job at the FBI to become full-time here. So this is my full-time gig. I coach wrestling kind of as a hobby. It allows me to continue to evolve as a coach's mind, keep me involved in wrestling because I love wrestling. And, you know, now with everything being crazy with groups and let me rephrase. Instead of going to lots of tournaments all the time, they're not happening as often. I'm doing a lot more actual wrestling camps where I'm teaching wrestling. So traveling a lot with Mike Krause, doing some camps on my own. I just ran a 24-hour lock-in with Eric Floyd. If you haven't already, like, talked to Eric, a good guy that nobody knows about who is like special forces in the military. That's a wrestling coach that also now does these lock-ins. Like, I'm going back to my roots while we grow the mindset business in the ways that we can during this interesting time. So yeah, that's my story. It was long and it was detailed, but
okay.
A lot of it happened.
It'll help us get into other stuff. But yeah, I mean, you know, and it's good to know that the guys that started this aren't just some jambronis that were sitting in the back of their car going, I think we can motivate kids. Let's write it down and just try to make money on this shit. They actually
for wrestlers by wrestlers,
got the education, wrestled, Ivy League, psychology, and they're bringing you the juice. So that's awesome, man. So, you know, you had mentioned the FBI. I was doing a little bit of research on you and listening to some stuff you've done. And so you're sitting there, you're doing surveillance work, you're doing hostage negotiating, you're living your dream. I mean, you're doing what you always set out to do. You're at the FBI. Yeah. What does 1% of the people fucking get?
Literally 1%. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're just the shit, right? and get in with it, right?
I felt good about myself.
Yeah. I gotta imagine. And you did that for 7 years, but you're doing this stuff. What made you, I know you spoke a little bit about them trying to drag you out of the FBI. What finally made you say, yeah, you know, okay, I'm going to give up pension. I'm going to give up,
Yeah.
you know, all this stuff here to take a shot with this. Obviously, it says a lot about wrestling mindset. Um, and thank God it's worked, right? But what
Right. Well,
yeah.
everyone always asks for testimonials. I was like, I think mine's the best. All right. I left my damn like cush dream job I've ever wanted career to like leave for somebody else's startup, you know? And I think I left my dream job for my passion. I wanted a career in wrestling. A lot of things had to not go the way that I wanted to in order to bring my attention to this. This was always something that like, once I got involved, I wanted to get more involved, but like a lot of things just had to not go the way that I wanted to, or like, I didn't foresee the future that I thought, I thought I was going to pour my energy into growing this massive club and make it like a Legends of Gold, or like a Pearl Wrestling Academy, like create something special in Houston. And ultimately, like when those things didn't seem like they were going to go the way that I wanted to, handful of things like at work, I thought I was going to move into a particular line of new work, right? I did surveillance. Like the main jobs that I did was I did surveillance, I did forensic accounting, and then I was essentially like a program manager I was running the process for background investigations in Houston, the crisis negotiation and certification and stuff like that. Those were all auxiliary duties. Behavioral science research, that was all auxiliary duties. But ultimately, when I realized I had to choose between like, I'm going to need to leave Houston to pursue the specific opportunities that I want, or I could stay in Houston and pursue this particular opportunity abroad. That was essentially like once I got to that crossroads of like, I want to take the next step in my own like self-actualization and development. I found myself at work thinking about like the mindset training a lot and thinking about the business a lot. And, a lot of, they say when you're looking for a sign, there's going to be one. And I never had times in my life where that happened. I just had multiple things in my life that like whether it was God or somebody telling me like, hey, pay attention. I had a handful of those, again, just combined with like where I was, like I was either going to take a major step forward in my career, but leave where I was, or I was going to leave my career and shift and pivot. Ultimately, my heart, I knew was in wrestling. So I just believed in the vision. The vision was always also not about wrestling. One of the big things that allowed me to leave was the vision was for all sports. So we have a sports-specific program in over 21 other sports that we work with, 3,500 plus athletes a year. That vision, corporate mindset, sales mindset, the long-term, like that were literally right before COVID hit, that was all the other sports and the corporate part was like booming and then kind of got kicked in the balls, So we didn't lose. We just now had to shift our focus to maybe building in some other ways. But that's essentially what got me to leave was I knew my heart was in wrestling. And this was, I always wanted a career that was like tough to have, impressive to say, and was going to impact lives. And I felt like I could impact more lives through wrestling mindset and winning mindset, in athletes and sports, than I was going down the path that I was at the FBI. So
how much of what you learned at the FBI has helped wrestling mindset?
I think life is a vehicle for sports. Sports is a vehicle for life. I got into the FBI because of the things that wrestling taught me, right? Like what's on my resume and the way that I interviewed was very much from wrestling. And then what I learned at the FBI and the 40-hour negotiation course that I went through, the behavioral science research certification, how to deal with high-level people in high-pressure situations, that then applied and made me a better wrestling coach and a better mindset coach. So wrestling, the life lessons that wrestling taught me and what life taught me definitely would be the strongest building blocks for my abilities as a mindset coach and like growth and development in the company. But for sure, the things that the skills and the experiences that I had at the FBI, they helped put a lot of those in perspective for me and then to share to other people, and definitely gave me some very unique skills and obviously like resume credibility that is hard to come by. You know, like I relate to kids. I'm like, you're so afraid to give up points. Like focus is finite. 100% of your focus, right? If 80% of your focus is on not giving up points, then only 20% of your focus is on putting points on the board. I was like, you're so worried about giving up a takedown. Why? You're down 2-0. How often have you been down 2-0 and came back? 4-0, 5 points, 6 points. You've all come back, right? As a hostage negotiator, or as a crisis negotiator, as we'd call it, if we say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, people die, right? Like I've made mistakes in the midst of surveillance operations and things like that, where like could have potentially had a bad impact, but we all make mistakes, right? The difference is, you know, your mistake could impact a national security investigation or somebody's life. You just give up 2 points. So I can't relate that. Had I not gone through the FBI, like I can't relate that and make things so real. Like stop stressing over giving up points. Flip the script, right? Less than 20% of you is worried about getting scored on. I'm so focused on scoring. I just did a clinic. I was part of the combine that World of Wrestling put on for top 160 athletes in Tulsa. Sammy Sasso was the clinician, and he's there talking. He's like, man, my focus next year is learning how to score more on my offense. But he's like, I'm not worried about getting scored on. If you shoot on me, I'm gonna pin you. And that's how we need to teach kids. It's not offense.
Except our boy Pat Lugo down in Florida.
Like, yeah, right. So it's
our Florida boy took it to him.
That's right. That's right. And it's like, you know, we can't worry about offense and defense, offense and counter offense. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to score. My ties or no ties. I'm putting up my points. But if you shoot on me, I'm going to make you feel like that was a terrible decision. If I don't pin you, I'm going to hurt you.
Yeah, no, he's an amazing wrestler, and but yeah, we were proud of Pat Lugo when he got that win.
No, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
Yeah, because I would think that I mean, if I were the Zanettis and I'm getting this dude from the bureau, I'd want to sit down and table some cool shit. Be like, yo, what can you bring here? What can you talk?
Well, especially in the beginning when like we were in the infancy of the business, like it was a lot of, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Well, my experience, I think that like that was one of the unique things that encouraged me to come on, especially in the beginning, was a lot of collaborative efforts, you know, and then like obviously as the business has grown, we've compartmentalized a lot of the things that we do. But in the beginning, it was very much like a huddle. Like, all right, let's all talk together and figure out like, what are we going to do? You know, like leaning on each other. Gene was the one that literally went everywhere. Jeff just did all the back office work. And then we had a couple of coaches trying to field a ton of interest. And, you know, what the role that I filled was the traveling spokesperson, the traveling face, you know, while they buckled down and built the business. And, you know, like I said, it was, I didn't have, like, Gene didn't sit down and train me to do what I do. He was like, hey, like, I think you got a good understanding. Let's go, like, watch some videos of me and watch the things that I said. And that's what I did in the beginning. Like, from the get-go, I'd watch what he'd say, and I'd take it and use it in my practice before I was ever a mindset coach. I'm like, look at this, you know? And then, like, I studied what he did. I applied my personality and my experiences. And the more that I traveled, the more that I spoke, the better that I got. And, you know, now I feel like I'm a 10.0 version as a mindset coach. I'm sorry, a 5.0 version of who I am as a person, but definitely a 10.0 version of what I am as a mindset coach. But, you know, all of this came as the brainchild from Jeff and Gene. So it was like very, very super impressive that they were able to build what they build, and then they recruited the right people. And, you know, we just been on that.
I'm sure the stuff you were learning from them, you were bringing back to work too. So, but I got to imagine when you left the FBI, there's a lot of stuff in your head that you had to put into a safe, lock and key, because you're never allowed to discuss that again. And then the other stuff that you could play with are definitely out there benefits.
Sure.
I know one, and you spoke about it, so I don't even need to ask this question because you already made it very clear what impact wrestling mindset has had on wrestlers around you that you know, that you've been involved with.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot where you're really, really trying to be involved with the NWCA because you believe there's something here for coaches. Talk about that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, not just NWCA, I think coaches associations in general, you know, that being the main hub, I remember sitting down with Mike Moyer and just having a discussion on like, how do we help coaches? How do we do this? Like, what's a program that we can come up with to help better, work with your leadership academies, this and that. Ultimately, like what I tell people is that change comes from the top. Change starts from the top down, but it's gonna actually happen from the inside out. So when a team does wrestling mindset, it's just as much training for the coaches as it is training for the athletes. So people are always asking, well, how does it work? Like, do you train our coaches and we do it? No, we come in, we're on the other side of the Zoom call. Your team is all in a room or now in 50 different Zoom screens. But everything that we say as a third party, if you're a good coach, you probably said it in a certain way, but you didn't have a system to deliver it. So we're on the same team, but you're going to learn a lot. That's why in the beginning, man, and still to this day, I think that's what makes me so good at what I do. I'm such a student. Like, I was so like chomping at the bit, listening and learning, because even though you're teaching the kids, I'm learning if I was a coach on the other side of a Zoom call, yes, you're educating my wrestlers, but me learning these sort of things, I could take and apply as a coach. And then obviously as a husband, as a father in my business. And, I think moral story is coaches are going to be the heart and soul. Coaches and parents are the heart and soul of this sport. Coaches are the one guiding, parents are the one guiding, and parents are the one paying. Not us, but for the wrestlers to do anything. Right?
So it's almost like your goal is to get the coach to fire you.
Well, it's funny.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean by that, right?
I totally know what you mean.
Yeah.
I totally know what you mean. And it's one of those things. It's funny you say that. It makes me think of dating apps, right? Like dating apps are made to be deleted, right? You're supposed to meet somebody. The difference between us and that is like. There's a team I work with in Michigan. They were the first team I ever worked with, Dundee High School. Coach Tim Roberts actually just won National High School Coach of the Year last year. I've been working with that team for 5 years, right? I've been through an entire cycle of their high school. I'll work with them forever. So this past year, I worked with all four of the state championship teams in Michigan. All 4 teams that won a state title. 3 of them repeated. 1 of them won for the first time. I'll work with them forever because the guy that does your strength training, you don't fire him unless it doesn't work. The guy that does your technique or your top or your bottom or your kids club, you don't fire him unless it's not working. So you got a coach for your strength and conditioning. You got a coach for this and that technique. You got a mom that does all your fundraisers, and you got a mindset coach. So we're with your teams forever until budget doesn't allow. Right. But what happened, like, here's the reality. When it's important, we figure out ways to pay for it. Right. When it's important, we figure out ways. Hey, listen, we don't need new singlets last year because singlets aren't winning us more matches. This is what's winning us more matches. We don't need a new locker. Maybe we're going to do a little bit less of this and a little bit more of that. So moral story is we're not made to be fired. We're here to grow together. And like Tim Roberts is a great example. He would say, I'm as big of a part, or they've learned just as much from me, right? They're like, you're a big part of why we've won 3 in a row, why we've got 3 nationally ranked kids on our team. I'm like, listen, I appreciate that, but like, I learned just as much from those guys and watching them grow. Tim travels around the country to learn from other coaches. He has won 10 state titles without me. I haven't been a part of any of those. But he knows he needs to grow. He needed a system. And like, we pick each other's brains. Hey, I saw you went to this clinic. What did this guy say? What did this guy show? We grow together. And the best coaches are like, yo, I need more. Like, you're an expert in something I'm not. I know a lot. You got a system. I believe in what you do. Teach me, teach my kids. And that's why I love traveling, because I'm around some of the best.
That's good, right? Because you don't want, when I said get them to fire you, I meant like, you've taught the coach how to
no, I know exactly what you meant.
Mindset coach that now your job is done here, basically, right? So you fed them. But no, I mean, it sounds like it's mutually beneficial, because I'm sure you're sitting in that guy's room in Michigan, and you come back to your club and you're like, guys, this guy's won 15 state titles. Holy shit. Let's try this. I saw him in the room do this. I know it sounds silly, but he makes them do this one move 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And it works.
I think one of the best, not testimonials or however you want to look at it, we have a number of coaches whose team did the program that then become mindset coaches. A number. Like one of the guys, he won, I don't know how many state titles with his team in Louisiana. I did his team. He stopped teaching and he's like, I want to be a mindset coach. I loved what you did. And like, I feel like I could do a really good job. And, you know, shout out to Robbie in New Orleans. You know, he does a great job. He takes 30 years of wrestling, 20 years of coaching, and, you know, and the exposure as going from client to coach. Our best coaches, for sure, are the guys that were clients first. And I think that's what made me be a trendsetter for a lot of people, is that like I learned what to do and what not to do, and then became obviously like a part of the growing process. And our best coaches for sure are definitely guys that went through the program as a coach first. So I think that's a great testament.
That's all. So you're getting some shout outs, Coach. Let's see, you got your boy Estrada, let's go, Mindset Mike. You got Jacob Eck, best mind in the game. Joe Nice, Canelo, Beast, Chuck Morris, Big Mike is the man. Jeffrey Estrada coming back in with no one can do what Mike does. They can learn and try, but Mike is authentic and one of a kind. So you've got some good people there shouting you out.
Man, well, hey, listen, I love each one of those guys as much as they appreciate me back. You know, Eck and Jeff are two people that love wrestling. Right? Love wrestling. And they have made so many sacrifices in their own lives to benefit the sport and for kids. So, you know, again, getting comments like that from guys that have built champions that are like very, you know, important people to me. Jeff brought me out to SOT back in the day, you know, and the growth that I've seen him do as a human, you know, if anyone's seen Jeff over the last couple of years, he's a different man. You know, and he's made so much growth as a human, and to be a 2% part of that process. And I learned as much from him as he did for me when I would come. And I only know Jacob Beck because of Jeff, because we all work mutually with the same kid. You know, wrestling is an amazing thing. And that's, again, why did I leave a dream job? Because of the relationships and the impact that we all cumulatively make in wrestling. All the stuff we did from the FBI, nobody knows. It's behind the scenes, and you're a tiny part of the process. We are hands-on in changing kids' lives. And, you know, there are a lot of kids that Jeff, me, Eck, and like other guys, we work as a Bill Mitchell. We all know we work with the same kids. We're a team.
I said to somebody the other day, and two of the guys are on here watching, Chuck Morris and Jeff Estrada. I said, man, I would love to eat breakfast with Jeff Estrada, Chuck Morris, and Mike Krause. I said, I think my heart will come out of my chest by the end of it, because I had those guys on all at different times, and they are just bringing it. Also, the coach for Virginia, if he could be at the table. I just met you. There's a coach up at Wrestling U, man. These guys just bring them.
You talking about Tanner or LaValle?
Yeah, LaValle. I had LaValle on. He did a clinic this weekend.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think he's doing another one. But man, these guys are just going.
Here's the thing. It all comes back to when you know your why, you'll suffer through anyhow. Our why is connected to our love for wrestling and our love for helping kids. So you figure it out, like, and you cherish, like, you can literally go to coach a bunch of kids, lose money on the trip, and it hurt your pocket, but those kids' lives are changed. And again, I agree, like, the tables that I've been able to share with people, it's like, it's so awesome, like, to be able to have learned so much from so many people, and that's how we all get better. But like,
I can't believe it. You know, look at me. I never wrestled a day in my life. My kid is wrestling. I've seen it, and then I said, I'm going to start a wrestling show. People are like, what the hell do you know about wrestling? I go, well, right. I have a purpose. I have a why, and I'm going to figure it out. And it's been doing okay, you know, and it's pretty cool. But you know, I'm kind of really humble. Like, people would be like, dude, you know who you've talked to? I'm like,
yeah,
okay. I'm like, but most importantly, I'm hoping people got to hear from them. You know, to have a coach say to me, man, I started a new program, and then I saw these coaches on your show that started a program 5 years ago that lived literally 2 hours from me that I never even knew existed. I picked up the phone and called them, and now they're helping me grow my program. They're telling me things that I need to do to get better, to build my program. I would have never met them if I didn't see them on your show. So things like
100%.
that are awesome, man.
Wrestling's a family community, and it creates who you know creates opportunities, and like, you know, there's just so much. There's so much to be gained by being a member in this community.
Mr. Guglielmini, Coach Guglielmini, or Googs, as we affectionately call him, he just said, thank you, sir. He just said, what is the mindset difference between middle school and high school?
Well, I think a lot determines what they did beforehand, right? Like, you know, what the experience, like wrestling, and then like their emotional relationship with wrestling was. Did they have like a really intense youth career? Did they not wrestle at all? So if I were to just be general and assume that like they had an average or minimal exposure to wrestling when they were younger, middle school still needs to be about fun, but foundational development, right? It's always about fundamentals, right? It's always about foundation, but continue to make sure that they're going to enjoy their experience, because high school gets harder, right? High school, typically kids feel more pressure. Like Krause says, we're wrestling in kids to get to high school, right? Like we're winning our high school state titles now at age 8 and 9. Right? So you need to focus on fun and fundamentals. In high school, it's still fun. We still reinforce the fundamentals, but you're also having to deal with developing someone off the mat as well, dealing with puberty, dealing with popularity, dealing with a lot of things that when we were younger, you didn't have to. So I think like at the core, it never changes. Fun, like love for the sport, foundational, like always reinforcing fundamental techniques, the foundations of why we're successful. Like what makes us good as a 7-year-old should make us good as a 17-year-old, right? But I think you really like in the younger ages, you're doubling down on that, because what our sport struggles with is retention. How many kids you know that won all these Trinity Awards and Tulsa titles that you don't see wrestle in college, right? High school is where a lot of kids deal with burnout. Right? Like they have this great youth career and then they burn out in that like 8th to 10th grade when stuff starts getting serious, right? They start going to Fargo, these larger competitions. So I think technique wise is really what it should change the most, but our shift should be on the same thing. Our focus from day one, have fun, get better at wrestling. Have fun, get better at wrestling. Youth is training for middle school and high school. Middle school is training for high school and college. High school is training for college and the next level, or your UFC career, or whatever's doing next. But you know, you focus on fun, you focus on fundamentals. You make sure that the number one most important thing is not wins, it's keeping a kid in the sport, because the more they get in the sport, the more likely that they're going to coach. Right? The more likely, the higher level they get in the sport, the more likely that they're going to feel indebted to the sport and want to give back. Kids that burn out in high school, you don't typically see them come back. We need people to come back and complete that cycle. So that's what I would say, is that like, you know, in high school, we're dealing with a lot more burnout. The technique's a little bit different, but it really comes down to from day one, it's about having fun and getting better, right? We just change what we teach. In the beginning, like technique is different, but it's very much about fun. They have to fall in love with wrestling. So if you had a strong youth career, like a lot of intensity, strong middle school career, they're probably going to have to re-fall in love with wrestling again. So don't ever come away from that, because Penn State plays more dodgeball than they do live wrestling. So
I think, and what is your opinion on this? Obviously, first of all, Fun Schmacks Mike from Eck, Jacob Eck, right? They started laughing. What's your opinion through this process? Obviously, one of the big things out there is it's really screwing the kids' mind up, right? Because mentally, they want to be out with their kids. They want to be doing off-season training. They want to be with their friends. They just want to have a summer, right? Which is behind us because school started today or tomorrow. But do you think that the love for wrestling might be even greater now that it was taken away from you? And now when you get back to it, you might be like, wow, I really miss this and I love it even more now. Do you think we're going to see a lot of that?
Yeah. So all my teams and individuals, and like even Wrestling Mindset as a whole, the people we talk to, it's like our first principle is I'm thankful for the opportunity to wrestle. most people don't think that we get to wrestle. We got to go to practice. I have to go to practice. I have to compete because I have to win. Then all of a sudden, when you're an Ohio high school kid and they cancel your state tournament the night before, and you're a senior that's been dreaming your whole life to be a state champion, it hits a little different. When the NCAA gets canceled, it hits a little different. Typically, kids don't become thankful for wrestling until they get injured, right? So as a sport, we should definitely have seen wrestling as an opportunity that was taken away. That, oh, I'm so happy that I get to do that, right? Like, I don't live by a really nice beach. So when I go home to New York and I get to go to the beach that I grew up in, like, oh, I'm so glad that I get to be by a beach or get good pizza, get good bagels. Like, you would never think you mix pizza and bagels so much until you leave New York, right? But my point is that, like, if it was done right, kids should be more passionate for wrestling than ever. Here's the problem, and this is what I foresee happening a lot. Yes, I missed wrestling, but I'm so out of shape that because I didn't take advantage of the opportunity to train, and holy crap, the kid that did is so far ahead of me. I foresee a lot of coaches, parents, and athletes not handling the return to the mat well if they haven't been doing much, and a lot of kids quitting if it's not done right. Right? It has to be about love for wrestling, focus on getting better. Like, I'm not worried about winning this. I just got to get better. And I know maybe I'm not in the best shape, but I can get better. I get better. So I'm worried a lot of kids are going to quit if coaches come with the same expectations, right, for their team. And if kids come with this, well, I was really good last year. Now I'm getting my butt kicked because this kid did 2-a-days all throughout COVID, right? So, like, coaches, we need to make sure we're preserving kids in the sport and reminding them how glad we are to get wrestling back, and we're never going to take it for granted. So on the flip side, like I said, I think the kids that took advantage of this, their life has been changed. And on the flip side, the kids that didn't, their life has been changed. We're probably going to have a graduation of some of the laziest kids we've ever had because they were allowed to sit at home. Well, you don't have to train. You can't train because the news says it's really bad for you to do. There's nothing that you can do. We enabled laziness on the next level. But we also taught that 10% of kids that were like, oh, well, I can really close the gap. That changed their life. They're going to see the value of hustle more than anything. So we can't control what kids did or didn't do, but we can make the most of what we get from them when we can go back, right? So it's not about winning or losing, guys. Let's get in better shape, right? If you're in great shape, cool. Like, I'm happy for you. If you're not, right, let's focus on getting better shape. Let's love wrestling and be so glad that, like, we get to wrestle again, and don't ever take it for granted. Because if you were to told kids 6 months ago, hey, this might be the last wrestling practice you get in a long time. Hey, you may not be able to wrestle at the NCAA tournament. This is the last practice you get in your career. This is the last match in your career. How many of those people would have wrestled different?
For sure. And like you said, the ones that were seniors at whatever level, it hit differently. You know, even though it hurt some underclassmen, but they still have that opportunity is going to come. We understand what's going on this year in the fight.
I think, obviously every team's different. Some team hadn't stopped. Some teams trained more in the last couple of months than they have in the last couple of years, right? I think it's all determining. It's all relative. I think the point is that, like, if you haven't been training much with your team, or your team hasn't had that much opportunity, you have to adjust your expectations for how they're going to come back, and they need to adjust their expectations for how they're going to come back. Now, like my kids, we haven't stopped training. We had opportunities, and we're very, very safe about it. So we haven't stopped, and like now that we're back, like our conditioning requirements have increased from what it would normally be. Point being is that you have to balance your expectations, their expectations, and what actually happened, and the focus needs to be on getting better, right? Getting back into shape, but loving wrestling and being so glad we got it back. So when they have a bad day because they get their butt kicked by a kid that's been doing 2-a-days and they haven't, don't quit the sport or feel like you're so far behind. Do what you need to do to catch up. But I'm so glad that I'm back wrestling. I'm so glad that I get to be back with you all, right? Like, I hope this never happens again because I missed you all so much. we have to focus on being grateful to wrestle again, not frustrated that depending on your state or your work ethic or what your, I got kids that wanted to train so bad and their parents said, absolutely not. It is what it is, right? So either you made the most of like doing stuff at home, you did stance motion with your little sister on your back, or you didn't do anything, right? There's 3 types of kids in COVID. They did nothing, they did the minimum, and they did a lot. Okay, some of those kids were good, some of those kids weren't good. Okay, we can't have the same expectations coming in this year. There are going to be kids that didn't even place at the state tournament that are going to wreck kids this year because a lot of people couldn't train when a lot of people couldn't. A lot of people could when a lot of people couldn't. Some people made the most of it. Some people had like extra resources. Some people went Rocky style. But point is, kids did this, kids did this. There's no in between. Right? If you did minimal or nothing, you went backwards. If you did more than the minimal or a lot, you jumped massive levels. So focus on focus on just getting better. Focus on remembering how much it sucked for wrestling not to be there, not on what they did or didn't do during COVID. Okay.
Awesome. Now, before we get into my 10 questions and wrap it up, because I know you've got some players on the big national level that you got to get on the phone with, from the Big Ten and stuff that just unfortunately lost their year. So you got to get in their head and make sure their brain's right, which is awesome. Good for you. But before we get into my 10 questions, how do people get on the wrestling mindset? How do they get it? How do they get involved with it? Does it need to be a team thing? Can it be individual? Does age matter? Any of that stuff? How do we get it? How do we plug it in?
So great question. I appreciate that. So if you want more general information, listen, if you either want information on the program or you've got questions on what I said or you just want some advice, please reach out directly to me if you're tuning in here. So if you want to, you can put Daniel, my personal cell phone number in both of those feeds. Again, if you're listening in, I want to talk about, I want to be able to speak about the specific things that we talked about here, and service and help as many people personally myself. So you can reach out to me, 516-510-4684. You want to check out more information, you can go on Wrestling Mindset on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I would say Twitter is like quick bursts of info and motivation. Instagram, we dig into a little bit more detail. We can have longer posts, but mainly still focused around pictures and short bursts. Then Facebook, we give a lot of content, right? But if you have questions, please, I challenge you to reach out directly to me. I'd love to answer your questions. I love interacting with people across the community. If you, again, you could find information on the websites. If you're not a wrestling coach or if you coach other sports, you can look at zwinningmindset.com and see all of the other success we've had in other sports. We took the same exact formula, the same core 55 worksheets, and we made them sport specific in every other sport. So the results are no different. Right? When you buy in, when your kids buy in, when we do our job, when we just focus on doing our job and your kids are motivated on getting better and we have established a good rapport with your team, we get results. Now you asked about individuals. That's how the business started, right? We have tons of individuals. 3 of our kids last year were on Who's Number One. And then we had thousands of kids last year who were just trying to get to the next level. There's 3 types of clients: the average or above average wrestler looking to jump levels, the middle of the round wrestlers looking to close the gap on the best, and the best that want to widen the gap on everybody else. Individuals, teams, other sports. We work with numerous people in sales, business, you name it. You want to work with mindset, you want to realize, you want to maximize your potential, you know we're the gold standard. Please ask me questions directly. I'd love to, even academic. Right, working with tons of schools this year in our academic program. I will direct you to the right resources if I can't answer any of your questions, which I'm sure that I can.
And I know you got to go, but this is, and maybe
Okay, please go ahead and ask your 10 questions. Also, if you want to, the other place to reach out directly to me, Mike Moore on Facebook, and then Mindset Mike on Instagram. I love interacting with people. So you got my phone number, you got my Instagram, you got the company's websites, and you've got all the ways to get in touch with us. But please, I'd love to talk to you myself.
Yeah, and I'm going to, because I have some questions, but I'll hit you
Go
up
for it.
I'll hit you up on your cell on that. But as far as 10 questions, all right, a little bit of fun we do at the end of the show. I know you've seen it. Nothing to do with anything, but Texas barbecue or Maryland seafood?
Ooh, that's a great question. Definitely gonna have to go with Texas barbecue. I love seafood, but there is nothing, I don't care where you are in the country, that tastes quite like barbecue from this side of the country.
I love it. All right, the Texans or the Rockets?
Definitely the Rockets, but a huge JJ Watt fan.
Nice. Okay. And I got all this from the best food in Houston. Okay, so
Huh?
po' boys or kolache?
Kolaches. Kolaches, think of the consistency of like the best bagel and donut put into like a little hot dog bun, and they shove stuff in the middle. That's a kolache. You can get like the traditional sausage, egg, cheese, and jalapeno, or a bunch of like savory stuff or sweet stuff. You said kolaches or po' boys? Definitely kolaches.
Nice. All right. The Houston Zoo or the downtown aquarium?
I would say the zoo. The aquarium's kind of old and outdated, and it's like smack in the middle of downtown, like not in the nicest part. It's cool. I brought my daughter a handful of times. Definitely the zoo. The zoo does a lot of cool events too.
I like it. All right. All right. We got the Viet Cajun crawfish or the grilled Gulf oysters?
Viet Cajun crawfish or grilled Gulf oysters. So the Gulf oysters, I would say, is more New Orleans thing. There's actually a fighter, and man, I hope he sees this. There's a grappler who, like in the Houston MMA community, everybody goes to him for crawfish. His name's Mike, and his place is Mike Seafood, and he does. So he's of that descent, and does a lot of like really good seafood, different kinds of crawfish. My point is, crawfish in any way is delicious. When you start mixing in like other cultures with your crawfish, dude, next level. So if you come to Houston, you go get good crawfish, but you find crawfish with an Asian fling, Mike Seafood is the place to be.
I love it. Shout out to Mike's. All right. This one is the Kima Boardwalk or Hurricane Harbor?
So Hurricane Harbor, I think, is like the water park. The boardwalk is in Galveston, and the only beach, which is kind of meh, right? Coming from Long Island, it's hard to compare beaches. The Kima Boardwalk has a bunch of rides and stuff. I would say definitely Kima Boardwalk's a lot more fun than the average water park.
Like Coney Island?
Yes, Kima Boardwalk's like Coney Island, just not as cool.
They don't have Nathan's.
No. Gosh, I miss Nathan's. I haven't thought of them in years. This is fun, man. I think you should share a compilation of the best 10 questions from all the different people. This is a cool part of interviews. The only time someone's ever asked me questions like this was Derek Lewandowski from American Women's Wrestling, another good guy to interview. He asked like off the wall questions, and I thought it was really cool. So I do a lot of interviews, and this is a fun part.
I like it. Well, thank you. I don't know how to cut or do any of that. So that's why my shows, when they get sent out, there's no like, they're not fancy. They go the way
iMovie, bro. iMovie, or like you can honestly, it's easier to edit on your phone than it is edit on anything else.
Where are we at? Okay, chicken fried steak or Southern fried chicken?
Bro, that's a great question. So I'm not the biggest fan of chicken fried steak. I think it's cool and the concept is good. Some places do it better than others. But Southern fried chicken, like secret blends of herbs and spices down here, man. There's like, I'm not the biggest fan of Texas, and anyone will tell you that. But there's a few things that I'm like immensely impressed with, and food is one of them. Something that I hope you all, when you get a chance to go to Texas, Oklahoma, in that area, you go and you try Bluebell ice cream, because everybody talked about this Bluebell ice cream. And I'm like, dude, it's just ice cream. I don't know what kind of drugs or narcotics that are in there, but like there is something off the wall. This is like Coca-Cola with cocaine. Like, I don't know what they put in this ice cream, but when you have a pint, like people think Ben and Jerry's is good, try homemade vanilla plain nothing on it with Bluebell, you'll all of a sudden realize like I ate the whole damn thing.
I love it. All right, well, we've got to, I'm doing my 10 questions here, but then one came over. And that one is Estrada or Krause? Let's go.
Oh man, that is who asked it, Estrada or Krause?
Estrada.
Estrada. Okay, so when I travel, I say there are two people in the entire country that could that match or exceed my intensity, and it's those two. I can't even put them, I can't compare one another. I'm trying to think of like two of my favorite things in the same realm and comparing them. I really couldn't. It'd be like barbecue brisket and barbecue ribs. Like they're both awesome. They are like, when you're talking about Krause brings the heat, Estrada does his. Jeff and Krause, equally intense, but very different people. So I could never choose one or the other. I would say bring them both or none at all.
Well, I had Jeff on and he said that he would love to do a clinic 24 hours locked in with Krause and see.
Oh, no. These kids would walk out like walking different. Like they wouldn't like walking different, like in all of the right and the tough ways of physical nature. Jeff is one of the most intense people I've ever met in many ways. And like, it's one of the reasons that I love him. The same reason for Krause. Krause and I just did clinic for 3 days, and I'm like, so me by myself, intense. Krause by himself, intense. Can you imagine 3 or 4 days or even 24 hours with the three of us? These kids be walking around like David Goggins overnight.
He said kids are going to be like, one more throw. They're going to be trying to get through it.
Man, I didn't think yes, I think that needs to happen. So Eric Floyd, if you're listening, like most intense 24 hours of a kid's life. It's like J-Rob meets wrestling mindset meets like I can't even think of it. There is nothing more intense. 30 days of J-Rob in 24 hours. That's what the three of us in a lock-in would be.
And then throw in Chuck Morris, then throw in David Morgan up in Michigan, and then
my man David Morgan, is he on the call right now?
He's not on the call, but he's been on the show. And
great dude.
Him and his brother Charlie, man, they bring the heat.
Great dude. And like, speaking of bringing the heat, and I'll finish with this again, like, thank you everybody for tuning in. Like, I love wrestling as much as I love the people in wrestling, and the people, thankfully in most places love me back. And I'm so grateful for the friends that I've met, people like Jeff, people like Krause and Eck, and people like you for bringing us together. I look forward to the day where like I get to see a lot of these people in person, like, hey, Mindset Mike, and I'm like, you don't know me, but like I follow you on Facebook and blah blah blah. Like wrestling, there's no community like the wrestling community, and if things in our country get any worse, we're just going to make a wrestling compound, and all the bad mofos in wrestling, we're all going to get together and like, we're going to figure this out, because I don't need guns. I need wrestlers.
Yeah. Well, last two questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Chili con queso or pho?
Well, pho isn't a Texas thing, but I like pho more than chili con queso. But you think that you know chili con queso, you go to Torchy's in Houston or in Austin, and damn, man, like you haven't lived. It's next level. I don't know what they do, but they don't microwave cheese and throw some chili in it. It's next level.
Hey, so the last question, there's 2 books on your site, Developing the Predator or Transform Your Mind.
So I think the Predator Mindset ebook was like the ebook 2.0. Like the Transform Your Mind was like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like in the beginning, just to get people out there. There's actually a bunch of like small programs on the website right now. If anyone's curious to find out more and they want to kind of get like the nuts and bolts as to like the ideas and the concepts behind wrestling mindset, 100% the Predator Mindset ebook. The Transform Your Mind is like the 1.0 version. The Predator Mindset is like the 2.0 version. It's made sports specific. It gives you some detailed information. The best, like I always tell people, start wherever you want. You meet between the commitment and the need for mindset training and where your budget falls. If your budget is $40, then that's the best $40 you'll ever spend, right? Individual training, getting a mindset coach, a third party for your child or a third party for your team, that's the sauce. Like we work with, and I get the privilege to work with a numerous numbers of top 10 kids and programs in the country, right? They are geniuses at wrestling. I think that like there are some guys that I've been in the same room and I'm like, it's a privilege for me to be here, but you brought me in, right? Sometimes kids oftentimes need to hear it. Coaches need to hear it from somebody else. And I know it sucks that sometimes you got to pay for that, but the system and the third party together, right? System, third party, wrestling specific, it's like 1, 2, 3, right? If I don't get you on 2, I'm hitting you with 3, right? It makes a big difference. So again, thank you so much for allowing me to share my story and, you know, continue to be a contributing member in like the best community on the planet.
Yeah, man, it's been so awesome. And like I said before we talked off the air, I get humbled when somebody gives me a compliment because I didn't do it for that. And I don't do it for that. I do it because people need to meet Mindset Mike. People need to meet the young kid, Jakeway, that I had on yesterday.
Hey, so Jakeway used to be one of my clients years ago.
I can't believe this guy, Jeffrey Estrada, as fucking amazing as this guy is. He just told me when he was on my show that nobody has ever invited him on a show. And if you don't know this guy, you got to get him on your show because he brings it 1,000%. People
judge books by their covers, and they see Jeff as a guy that has a ton of tattoos and piercings, and they think, well, traditionally in our sport, those guys don't know. Like when have you ever seen a guy like that looks like that knows wrestling? What does how you look have anything to do with how much you know wrestling? Look at Bo Nickel. Does he look like a damn wrestler? When I saw him in high school with braces, red hair, big glasses, and a skinny kid, you wouldn't think that guy knows wrestling. Jeff knows as much as he loves wrestling and kids and has like broken his back in so many ways. My point is, Jeff is one of like Eck and I call him the godfather of hand fighting. You want to know about hand fighting? Jeff is one of the biggest reasons that Jace Lukow went from a complete nobody to number 2 in the country, right? To winning Fargo with an OW. Jeff literally moved in with that kid and made that kid into an ass kicker like he's making Jakeway, like he's made so many kids. There's so many kids that Jeff built that into world team members and national champions. You don't know, but they went through SOT, right? So many gangsters, right? But people don't know that. Why? Because they don't take the 2 seconds to realize that you need to see past like a image of what you think a good wrestler looks like and how good of a coach that he is. No one knows who Jacob Eck is unless you're dialed in the country. He works with some of the best kids and built some of the best guys and girls in the country. You wouldn't know, right? Now,
listen, I couldn't believe it. Talking to the guy and having the interview with the guy, I can't believe he's not on a show every week. I can't believe people aren't talking about it.
There should be a reality show, right? When I spent 4 days there, I'm like, why are there not a camera following you crazy people around?
I asked him, we were on the show, and I was like, hey, bro, have you thought about getting a tattoo?
That's funny.
He started laughing.
Like I said, people like, in Texas, I have a very different personality than what's like normal around here. I'm a New Yorker. Like I'm loud. I say it like it is, which people think is being a jerk, but realistically, I'm just telling it like it is. Like being real was rewarded where me and Jeff come from and in our upbringing. Again, never judge a book by its cover. You need to take time to get to know people. Like I said, I love Jeff like a brother, and I hope. And I was encouraging him to post more videos. If people saw the way Jeff's brain works and how it translates to making kids better, like people forget that he literally had one of the #1 youth clubs in the country that kids did so well and are now at the highest levels. You would have never known. Jeff's hit list is as big or bigger than anybody else in the country. So anyways, love you, dude.
And in his image, he'll be in his image in St. Pete on the 16th. I posted it. He'll be down here in Florida, but he's relocating to South Carolina, Hilton Head. Is that South Carolina or North Carolina?
Yeah, South Carolina, right?
South Carolina. So he'll be in Hilton Head. He'll be close to everybody. Anybody can get to him. Man, he's awesome. And Mindset, man, let's get involved. I'm going to text you and hit you up with some questions I have.
Sure.
Man, God bless you. Thanks so much for coming on. It's just an honor to get to meet you.
Thank you.
I get to talk to you and do this with you. So
thank you.
I appreciate you. And man, go keep these football players' minds right, because they just got cut, and you need to get on there and get in their heads, man. So you take it easy and do what you do best.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. Take care,
Yeah.
everybody. Thank
And
you.
keep kicking life's ass, brother.
Likewise.